Hello everyone! Last clan, at least available on BGA, we're going to talk about Rukgnarl. So Rook. If you've been following the videos I've done so far, you've often heard me say that Rook is often passive in the current meta because most players do not play Rook, which is a bit unfortunate. And I think that's because it's, I would say, currently a little underpowered, like Abu Nakashi was when it came out. I find Rook a little underpowered, and I'll kind of explain why. For me, the main point is that one, I would say, the strongest mechanic in the game is basically being able to shift your cards. Because when you're shifting your cards, you're able to play the cards in your hand, even if you've already filled up that row. You're able to play cards in your hand at a specific spot if needed. So it's a very strong mechanic, and it's, for me, a very important mechanic in GosuX. And Rook does not shift. The only card that can shift is Necrogob. All the rest have no shifting costs if you take a quick look. So you're playing with a clan that cannot shift, which can be an issue. Can also be an issue just as playing with other clans, because since it cannot shift, typically it doesn't match well with Abilasha, who likes giving secret shift to all its cards. Here, that doesn't work. Doesn't have any, except for the Byunja, it doesn't have any bounty card, so even Abu Nakashi isn't able to bring shift back to this clan. And instead of shifting, this clan has Shadow Step. And the issue with Shadow Step is that it's either hard to set up because there aren't currently too many cards that help you set up Shadow Step. There's Rehab in Galmi. There's a few Phoenix cards with Fengjuan, with Skis. You also have Yume, which can help you set up things. But other than that, there aren't too many cards that help you set up your Shadow Step. So often your Shadow Step will kind of be a blind guess. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't, you're capturing one of your card, which can be okay if your level 3 is online. In that case, you'll be able to play another card from hand instead of that one. But you've lost a lot in terms of tempo. Basically, you've used one turn to capture your own card, and then you're using another turn to do that Shadow Step in from your hand. And for that to work, you need Rook as a Rook passive online. So you need to have that level 3 already in play. So compared to a normal shift, you're losing a lot of time. And I think that's one thing that hurts this clan a lot currently. But don't get me wrong, Rook is a very fun clan to play. And actually, I think it was brought in the game for multiple reasons. One was kind of to try to weaken Abilasha, I think. And for that, you have the Akasha. So if Rook is banned, the Akasha, Abilasha is probably the clan that is the most hit by that Akasha. Is it enough? That's another discussion. I think it's not enough to really stop me from playing Abilasha even when this Akasha is online. And same thing, when Rook passive is online, it makes captures a lot less strong, and that hits Abilasha with the Apostle of the Night, with the Solak, even with the Silak. So the clan getting the clan in the game kind of, when it's not played, it kind of hits Abilasha a little harder than the other clans. And that's probably pretty good for the meta, because it kind of brings Abilasha at least to the level of Xian, and gives games that are pretty equal and fun to play. So that's the first thing. And the clan in itself is actually pretty fun to play. There's a lot of cool things you can do with Rook, whether it's with the sneak, whether it's with the Riyadh. There's a lot of nice things to do with this clan, but I think it's still a bit underpowered. And so, in terms of competitive play, I would say it's hard to consistently win with Rook. Of course, you can win a game with Rook, but to consistently win, it's a bit harder. And I know players who've tried it. I've seen Lardos tried it. At the moment, I've tried it. I've seen Waffle tried it. I've seen Troubadour try it, and trying to find the good combinations. And there are combinations that work out well, but still a little underpowered. And now we'll go into every card, and I'll kind of talk about which card I think are a little underpowered, and where I would say a little buff would be helpful in the game. And the thing is, with Astraea, who just came out, Rook has not been buffed, which I was kind of expecting a little buff. You don't need to buff a lot of things, but just a little buff I think would have helped. And that's one thing that where I was a little disappointed, is that Astraea came out and Rook did not get that little buff that I was kind of hoping. Like Abunakashi got that buff on Yume, plus the fact that corruption was a little wider used, and that was completely enough to make Abunakashi completely playable. Rook has Shadow Step, but there's no additional Shadow Step in Astraea, except for the Immortal tile. But so what we have here is not, at least from what I've seen, is not buffed, and we'll see how the meta evolves after the Rook meta. So let's talk about the cards. First one we have is Grubnose, which is a recruiter. And as long as you have fewer cards in play than your opponent, there's no limit to the number of cards in your hand. And that is a totally okay card. But when you start playing, you kind of think that that's a stronger card than what it looks. A little bit like All-in-One that I was talking when I was talking in Xian. When the first times you play it, you find it really cool to have no hand size limit, and to be able to have Narashima in passive and not be affected, to have many corruption tokens and not be affected. But actually that's pretty niche, and most of the time you're playing a recruiter with no effect. Now, okay, other recruiters don't have much effects either, but even Bulgo, I would say, is in that case a stronger recruiter, because he would at least give you the Wondrous token. Abilasha, he has a Secret Shift, so when you don't need him, you can bring something back from your discard. So I would value that even a little better than the occasional having, I would say, an infinite hand. And the Justice one has that if you get it late, you can use it as a force of will. Because that's the issue with the recruiters, is that if you get them early, they're nice and they help you develop. If you get them later, they're often dead cards. And Grubnose, I would say more often than not, becomes a dead card. But that's not a card I would change. It's just that it's a little less powerful than what you would think the first time you play that clan, at least in my opinion. Next we have Red Hoods. And Red Hoods is actually a good card. I really like that card because you can do multiple things. First of all, you can swap things in your army, which can let you play with that ethereal token if a Justice passive is in play. You can also helps you play with recruiters and bring them back again so that you can get develop your clans. And it's a card draw effect, and you're playing one card to draw two, so it's a positive card draw effect. You're just destroying a card on your board, which is not always a bad thing. Sometimes you want to play a card to destroy another one that doesn't have any more use, and that will free up a board position and let you play another level 1 or another level 2, and is can actually be beneficial. And the other thing that is very nice is that it has Umbra, meaning that it's a nice way to corrupt yourself, which can be very helpful for playing Riyadh, or can be very helpful if you're playing with Abu Nakashi and you want to get that Byujunja online. So this one is a very nice level 1 card. I like it a lot, and I find it pretty useful, and actually a good card. Next, we have the Death Emissaries, and this one has Shadow Step, and you're able to add to your hand a Shadow Step card removed from the game or from your discard pile. And that effect is actually quite nice. The problem is there aren't enough Shadow Step cards in the game currently. And so this card is weak, but kind of like Abu Nakashi before, it's weak because there aren't enough yet. So if the last clan that comes out brings back a few shadows, has a few Shadow Steps, this card can be totally fine without changing anything. But I find it currently a little weak, and even in Rook, not all your cards have Shadow Step. The 2 level 3s have Shadow Step, which is pretty good. You have 2 level 2s that have Shadow Step and 2 level 1s that have Shadow Step. So you have 6 on 11 different cards. So that actually makes a lot that do not have Shadow Step, and that can be a bit disappointing. The fact that you can also get a Shadow Step removed from the game is really just a nice to have. It's not what's going to make you win games. But the fact that you can get any one card from your discard pile that has Shadow Step can be strong, and it works as well with Phoenix. So that's one thing to keep in mind. I'm wondering with Astraea if when the tile is flipped, if it helps you get all your immortals back. That might make it a little stronger. I don't know if that's enough, but I would say with a little more Shadow Steps in the game, this card can be completely decent, and is a little weak for now, but I expect it to be good at one point in the game. Next, we have Necrogup, and Necrogup is, I would say, disappointing. It's probably the level 1 from Rook that when you draw it, you're disappointed. So what does it do? When you play it, you put a token on a card, and the card with that token has Shadow Step. And as I was saying, Shadow Step, if you don't have many ways to manipulate your library, which currently you don't, the problem is that Shadow Step is going to be random, and using it that way, you just might lose the game on your own, losing some tempo. So it's not a completely useless card. The most obvious is you play you play a Byujunja, I would say. You manage to manipulate your library, and then you can play Necrogub and put that token on your Byujunja, and then you'll be able to Shadow Step that Byujunja. And actually, you need this Byujunja somewhere in play as well, so it's even harder than what I remembered. But it's it can work with the Rook Byunja, but you really have to jump through hoops. It can work if you're lucky. I would say the only good thing is that you're giving Shadow Step. So if you get Turak to 0, or if you get Arrows of Justice, it might be an escape route to avoid having to pass, and maybe you can just launch the Shadow Step instead. And if you capture your card, it's okay. If you don't, well, so be it. And one thing to note is that placing that on either ethereal cards or on a card that has that passive ethereal token means that you can try the Shadow Step, and if it doesn't work, your card will not be captured. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But you are losing tempo because you're basically giving up a turn for nothing. So Necrogob for me is, I would say, underpowered, and maybe giving you a bit of help to kind of manipulate your library could have been a good thing with Necrogob. Not drawing any cards, but maybe taking a look, revealing the top 2 cards of your library and keeping one on top and keeping the other one in the bottom. Like that, your opponent knows what's on top of your library, and you kind of know if you can Shadow Step or not. And maybe you place that token before revealing the 2 cards, meaning that you can't select on what card you're placing the token compared to what you're putting on top, but at least you'll know if you Shadow Step right now, is it going to work or not. You're giving information to your opponent, but you're helping your Shadow Step in some way, and maybe other cards that are in play that have Shadow Step can benefit from that ability. So Necrogob would probably be one of the cards that I would be trying to up a little to help the clan. Currently, I find it to be a bit underwhelming. Next, we have Crazy Glurk as an immortal. So swap 2 cards on the same level. So it's the Red Hood, but I would say bigger. So you swap 2 cards in your army, and then you sacrifice 3 cards to draw until you have 7 cards. That's a very cool mechanic. It's not too strong, but it's a very cool mechanic. So I kind of like the card as it is. It also has Shadow Step. It also has Umbra, meaning that you can do that to get a token, and you can refill your hand. The thing is, if you have 3 or 4 cards in your hand, basically you're going to be sacrificing 3 cards to draw 3, which is really not enough. So this needs to be activated when you have like 2 or less cards in your hand and don't have any corruption tokens yet, basically, and can let you go up to 7. If you're drawing 5 or more with this card, then I would say sacrificing 3 cards to do that sounds fair. If you're drawing less than 5, not so much. It has a good combination with the Grubnose, because whatever the corruption you have, whatever Nara is in play, then I know at least you'll be able to go back up to 7. What you can also notably think about is the Xian Yunja. If you just discarded your 5 cards in your hand to really get that token, then playing him or just activating his Umbra on the next turn to get 7 back up and maybe reactivate a token right away can be interesting. Noting that you have to manage to sacrifice 3 cards without sacrificing that Byunja, so it might be a little harder than it looks. But there are probably a few things to do with this card. Next, we have Kaez, and I must admit I'm a bit disappointed with Kaez. So what does it do? You can place in the order you want X card from your discard file or the exile, and then your opponent can place Umbra token on any card. So first thing to note, it has corruption, and I've talked about corruption with Abu Nakashi. Corruption for me is it's not a bad mechanic, but it's a mechanic that if you really need the card to work, be sure that it won't, and you will lose the game. So it's, I would say, dangerous mechanic, and cards with corruption are often weaker than what they look like. So that's the first thing. So keep in mind, Kais has corruption. The other thing is, take a look at what it does. Basically, it's the same thing as rehab, but worse. So your rehab is you take X card from your discard, put it in on your library, and then you draw one. So at least you're drawing. With Kais, it's the same thing, except you're not drawing. So yes, I understand that that works a little better with the Byunja because you want to kind of master what are the cards on the top of your library to be able to shadow step in. But I mean, if you have two cards, just knowing the first one is often enough to kind of use that shadow step, and drawing another one is better. And yes, I know that you can also get the cards from the exile, but that's, I mean, that only happens when you're playing against Abilasha or when you're playing against Orga. Other than that, it's pretty rare that you'll have exile cards that really interest you, or you've done a lot of Yume and bad luck. You've exiled a card that you didn't want to exile, but that's a very niche scenario. So I really consider it as I would say a worse rehab. That even so, the effect for me is not as good as rehab. Plus, you're giving Umbra to your opponent on any of his cards. So basically, you're giving half Xian to your opponent for a corruption token, and it has corruption, meaning that if you really need it to work, you're just screwed because your opponent will corrupt himself, and that's it. So it's a nice way to bring corruption in the game, because even if your opponent corrupts itself, that's one token. Then you get the Umbra token, and you can use it, and poof, you've made two corruption token. You've brought two corruption token in the game. So on that part, it works well. But other than that, you're getting a worse rehab that has corruption, and a worse rehab that gives your opponent an effect. So I really think that this card is missing something, or I'm missing something. And yes, I've seen the potential with the Byunja. I understand that, but I think that it's really one of the cards that I would say is bringing Rook down. Knowing that another problem of Rook is that the level 2s are often pretty situational, or at least don't do much. And so actually you'll notice that you don't play the level 3s that much, because in the level 1s, Grubnose is okay, but if you get it late, it's too late. This card is okay if you don't sacrifice it to itself to draw the 2, but this card is fine. Necro, you probably don't want to play it. You probably want to discard it instead. And this one currently there's not enough shadow step for it to be consistently good. So the level 1s, you don't have that many that you really want to play right away. The level 2s, this one is really specific and really situational. As I was saying, this is a worse rehab, giving your opponent a benefit. The next one is the Akasha, and the Akasha is all Akasha cards are the same way. It's not cards you want to play. It's cards you want to exile. You don't want to play Akasha, because when it's in play, the turn it's in play, it's not doing anything. So if you're against Abilasha, then yes, all right, you'll be happy to play this Akasha, but you're still losing a turn playing it, hoping that your opponent will then secret shift cards and then start exiling cards that he didn't want to. But so the Akasha, like the other, not a very strong impact, but still a useful card to exile, useful card in terms of bans, and because it does affect the game, and that's interesting, but not the card you want to play. Then you have Riyadh. So Riyadh is actually a very cool card. It has Ethereal, it has Solo, and it's multi-clan, multi-level. Basically, it's multi-everything. So this is another Abomination card, like the one in Abu Nakashi, except this one, I understand why it's Abomination. It's very strong. It can be played on any level. It can be played as any clan, meaning that basically it's a indestructible all-in-one. If you're playing it as a level 1, and there's some nice things to do. It's a win condition, I would say, on its own. And often, what you like to do when you play Rook, and what is fun to do currently when you play Rook, is kind of going for that corruption route, where you're trying to give your opponent corruption token, and Riyadh is great to do that because it's also, I would say, easy to copy. Since it's all levels, your Dancing Dragons are able to copy Riyadh. Your Valine is able to copy Riyadh. Your Xian is able to copy Riyadh. Your At is able to copy Riyadh. Your Dark Cultist is able to copy Riyadh pretty easily. So lots of things to copy him. And one thing to note is, even if you play him as a level 3, playing a Dancing Dragon can still copy Riyadh. So you don't have to play it as a level 1 to be able to copy it with everything from Xian. Just playing the card and all your Xian cards will still be able to copy it. And Neo, placing a Neo close to Riyadh can double trigger it, and since it has Ethereal, it won't even be captured. So you can double aim it and give 2 corruption tokens, or take 2 corruption tokens, but I think most of the time you'll be giving the 2 corruption tokens. So Riyadh is a cool card. It's a card that is win condition on its own and kind of pushes you into a strategy on its own, and that's really cool. So this one, I understand why it has Abomination, and that really works. The solo on Riyadh might be overkill. Just Abomination, Ethereal, multi-clan, multi-level might have been enough, but having solo sometimes really does change the game. You're playing it as a level 3, you're winning 10 in terms of military, and that can really change the game. But so Riyadh, very cool design, very cool card. Lots of things to do, and we'll talk about combinations, but typically I have a hard time playing Rook with something else than Xian. If because with Xian you'll be able to abuse Riyadh with 2 Dancing Dragons, with 1 Valine, with 1 Neo. So that really helps out. You could say, okay, but you also have Dark Cultist with the Abilasha, but as I was saying, all the Rook cards do not have any shift costs. So the whole secret shift that you will gain with Abilasha, you won't gain it with the Rook. And if the card underneath Rook is another Rook card with no shifting cost, then you won't be able to bring that Dark Cultist underneath and replay the effect as much as you want. So basically, you might be blocked playing Rook plus Abilasha. So careful about that. And same thing, Rook plus Abu Nakashi. Abu Nakashi have strong shifting costs. Plus, here you're gonna be able, you have no shifting costs. So both of them, you're basically kind of giving up on shifting anyways. One thing to note with Riyadh and basically with that corruption strategy is that you're going to be quickly activating this Buyunja. So be very careful when you're playing Riyadh. If your opponent has Abu Nakashi, be careful to not just give him the win because he'll be able to play this Abu Nakashi, gain a token, and then if he has tomorrow Galmi, even Nitianda, he'll be able to replay that Buyunja once or twice and just quickly win the game. So careful with Riyadh. Very fun to play. Very nice strategy to kind of destroy your opponent's hand this way. And if Nashima passive is there, it's even stronger. If your opponent has already kind of given himself corruption, whether it's with Nashikita, whether it's with Neo, you can really do some damage. So very cool card to play. Another cool card to play, but dangerous card to play sometimes, is Sneak. So Sneak, what does it do? Each player swaps their deck and discard pile and then shuffles their deck. You can take a corruption token to add a card from your discard pile to your hand. So basically, this is kind of like L. You'll be able to get any card from your library and put it in your hand. So that kind of looks like L, except you're taking a corruption token, and you're swapping your. So lots of things to do with Sneak. Sneak is a very cool card, very interesting card. So works fine with Riyadh, because you can shift your library, and if you don't have Riyadh in your discard or in your hand, you play Sneak. You grab Riyadh in your hand. You get a corruption token, and unless the other abomination card is in play, that means that you'll be able to play Riyadh. So that can be a quick and cool way to activate Riyadh and to work with that. But Sneak can be also very interesting to play against tomorrow. If Neye is in the graveyard, boom, you sneak, and Neye is back in the library, and maybe your opponent can't ease as well. Or on the other hand, if you have tomorrow and you need to put Neye in your discard, you just play Sneak, and boom, if Neye was somewhere in your library, now it's in your discard, and that's interesting. Another thing is with Narashima. If you just won a token recently with the Buyunja, and like you have one or two cards in your discard, or even zero in your discard, then playing Sneak can swap the decks back again, and then just drawing the few cards that will be your library now can get you net you another token pretty quickly. So Sneak plus the Narashima Buyunja can be interesting. Now careful, also Sneak can be dangerous for you, typically if you're playing against Abhilasha, because everything in your library will become available to Abhilasha. So typically if you're playing Sneak and you don't have your Xian in hand or in your discard, be careful, because it will be in your discard, and if your opponent is able to Abhilasha or to Dark Cultist on Abhilasha, you will lose your Xian. So careful with that. And another thing is playing Sneak early can maybe sometimes help Abhilasha, because Abhilasha loves to have all its library into his discard, and sometimes the games where Abhilasha struggles the most is when they don't manage to draw that much and to fill up their graveyard. And playing Sneak can, if you're playing Sneak against an Abhilasha, maybe you're helping him by flooding his, by putting all his cards in his discard and giving him a lot of options. So That's another point to keep in mind with Sneak. Last thing to say about Sneak, which makes it a very strong card for, I would say, the try-hard harders, especially on BGA. You can also do that in a real-life game, but especially on BGA, is when you're using Sneak, basically it will tell you what cards your opponent has in hand. So Sneak has a little arrow of justice effect, because just before you play Sneak, you take a look at his discard, you note all the cards that are in his discard, you play Sneak, it swaps his library with his discard, you take a look at his new discard, and then you can not guess, but you can calculate the cards that he has in hand. And so even if he has 5-6 cards in hand, you'll know exactly what cards he have in hand if you note all the cards that were in his discard and the new cards in his discard once Sneak has been played. Thing to note is that your opponent can do the same on your side. So if he knew the cards in your discard, he can just take a look at your discard now and calculate the cards in your hand. So for two really strong players that are tryharding, someone playing Sneak means that both hands are revealed in a way, and that's something to keep in mind. Next, we have Rook. So Rook has, like all level 3s, an active, and also not all level 3s, but it has an active and it has a passive. The active is you choose a clan. Until the end of your next turn, opponent cannot play cards from that clan. And then the passive is your cards in hand have Shadow Step. So I'll start with the passive, actually. The passive is pretty nice because that means that the Rook clan kind of serves as a release clan, meaning that it will really help you with the captured cards, because if you're able to play Rook, then all cards captured are really no more, well, at least less of a problem for you, and you'll be able to shadow step them in for free, and that can help you develop your different clans. That can help you replay cards on certain levels for free. So the passive is actually very strong, and it's also a reason why Rook is not always being played. As I was saying, Rook kind of counters Abilasha and a bit of Goansul, and there are a lot of drafts where you just don't want to take Rook, not because it's weak, but because its passive is basically helping you against your opponent's aggression, and that's why you want Rook as a passive. So the passive is actually pretty cool and a nice passive. Now for the come into play effect. So you choose a clan, and until the end of your turn, your opponent cannot play cards from this clan. I find that actually pretty weak. Take a look at Arrows of Justice. Arrows of Justice, you take a look at your opponent's hand, and you choose the card you don't want him to play. Here, you have to do a wild guess. Unless you've been tracking and you have some information on your opponent's hand, most of the time, you'll be just randomly giving a color. I mean, not randomly, you'll be taking a look at what are the cards that hurt you the most, and then kind of blocking that clan away. But that's pretty niche. Most of the time, his come into play effect is not that strong, and you're not blocking any tokens. You're not blocking any shadow steps. So you're kind of hitting in the dark with that. And I think his come into play effect could have been stronger. It could have been something like take a look at your opponent's hand and then decide for a clan and that your opponent cannot play that clan until the end of the turn. And I don't think that would have been too strong, because this is a level 3, and currently, I mean, I almost find the Arrows of Justice stronger than Rook, because with Arrow of Justice, you would take a look at your opponent's hand, which is valuable information, and just wait until your opponent has 1 or 2 cards in hand, and Arrows of Justice will always be strong, or even in the beginning, it's always strong. Rook is more a shot in the dark and is a lot more random. So I understand that random effects can be cool for games. The fact that sometimes you just launch a Shadow Step and it's a Hail Mary, and if it works, it's cool, and that it's like a Hearthstone. When you're playing, there's a lot of random, and the randomness brings a bit of fun. But when you're trying to take a look at it in a for competition, I'll say it like that, the randomness, if it can be mastered, is pretty cool. If it can't, is not so good. I would say can sometimes bring games that are really cool, but most of the time will just be frustrating. And I think the Rook effect is not so strong. So a little bit disappointed with the level 3 effect. The passive is cool. The come into play effect, not so strong. One thing I forgot to say is that when you Shadow Step, you do not look at the conditions for the Shadow Step to work. So if your Riyadh is on top of your library and you Shadow Step any card, because it's all levels, so that will always work. If you Shadow Step, even if you don't have any corruption tokens, your Riyadh will be put into play. And I've had a game played against me where my opponent kind of tried a lucky Shadow Step with the Necrogob or something like that, and Riyadh got placed into him, and basically he had a stronger all-in-one into play at the very start, and that gave him a big advantage for the game. I don't remember who won, but at least when I saw that, that was a pretty cool play. It was random, but it was made a pretty strong play on his side, and kind of tilted the game towards him. So quick note on Shadow Step. Last card is the Rook Byujunja. So Shadow Step, Prime, like all the other Byujunja, and Bounty, sorry. When a Byujunja attempts and successfully and succeeds at a Shadow Step, you gain a token. So first of all, this condition is pretty hard to understand. So it's not when a level 3 attempts and succeeds a Shadow Step, it's only when a Byujunja does it. So that means it's either this Byujunja that has Shadow Step, or another Byujunja on which you've put a Necrogob token on it, for example. So that's the first part. Second part is this card still needs to be in play, or needs to be the one having attempted the Shadow Step for it to work. So if you have like a Galmi Byujunja, then you're Shadow Stepping it into a Galmi. It has successfully made its Shadow Step, but if this card is not into play, you don't gain the token for it. If you're playing this card, and even if you successfully Shadow Step into, I don't know, Rook or Galmi or whatever, even if this card is not on the board anymore, you'll still get the token, because it will have it still counts. It still has the succeeded at a Shadow Step. So this one is sometimes a bit tricky to remember what works, what doesn't. Same thing. Shadow Stepping from hand to does not work. So if you like if Rook is in play, you have a level 3 that is captured. you shadow step in with another Byunja. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think that counts as gaining a token. It's only because Shadow Step has two effects. It has one from hand and one on the board. And for me, this token is only you can only activate it from the board, not from hand, which also limits the things. So there are a few cards that work well with this Byunja. The first one that comes in mind is Rehab, because you'll be able to play this Byunja, Shadow Step it into a level 3, it's in your graveyard, then you play Rehab, you bring that Byunja back in your hand to be able to play it again, you put another level 3 on top of your libraries, and then next turn you play that Byunja, and then you can Shadow Step against on that level 3, and you're winning another token. Takes a lot more time than this Byunja once it's active, so you're kind of jumping through hoops. But I would say this Byunja plus Rehab is kind of effective. And that's where you're kind of disappointed with Kaez, because if you do it once, you gain a token, then you play Kaez to try to set up the other thing. You still need to find a way to draw that Byunja back and play it, and then Shadow Step in the Byunja you had. And let's say you have Rook in play that has Shadow Step. You play Kaez, you put this Byunja and another one on top of your library, then sure, you can activate the Shadow Step on Rook. This Byunja will come into play, but that will not give you a token because Rook is the one that has attempted the Shadow Step, so it's not a Byunja that has successfully Shadow Stepped. So you're losing a turn, replacing your Rook by this Byunja, and then the turn afterwards, yes, you can Shadow Step again, and if with Kaez you had put 2 level 3s on top of your library, then you'll be able to win the token. But basically, Rehab is much stronger at activating this Byunja than Kaez is, which is kind of a bummer. Also, the fact that if your opponent sees that with your Kaez you're going to win this way, even if you're going to win this way with Kaez, then he'll just corrupt himself. So yeah, you can then put a token on Kaez. You can also use put the Umbra token on Kaez and activate it, but maybe there's not enough corruption tokens anymore, and that doesn't work. So I find Kaez really weak for a corruption, for a level 2, for a corruption card, but it can work with this Byunja. Also, cards that work with this Byunja, there's, as I was saying, basically all the cards that help Shadow Step. So Feng Huang can work because you can place one of these 2 level 3s on top of your library, and then if this Byunja is in play, you can Shadow Step into it. And you also have Skis if you're a bit lucky on the 3 cards you draw. Yume if you're a bit lucky on the 3 cards you draw. And I think that's most of the cards that help you, I would say, manipulate your library. So, and that's what helps Shadow Step in general, and helps this Byunja getting its tokens in particular. To finish off, what does Rook work well with? As I was saying, for me, I find it very hard to play Rook without playing Xian, because the Dancing Dragons, Valine, and Xian just work so well with Riyadh, and kind of gives you a strong alternative win victory. So that's helpful. You also have the Byunja plus crazy Glork combination to try to win tokens that way. So that can help. Rook also works fine with Galmi because you will be trying to give a lot of corruption tokens to your opponent and maybe trigger that Galmi passive and win this way. Knowing that actually Rook on its own is not enough to give your opponent corruption tokens. So For me, the two combinations I've seen it work correctly is Rook, Xian, Galmi, because you can, if you're trying to play corruption, there's Rook, Xian, Galmi. I've tried Rook, Xian tomorrow, trying to abuse the Shadow Step. Same thing for the Riyadh. Trying maybe to abuse tomorrow. If tomorrow is in play, even if you're playing Riyadh as a level 1, it will still have echo and give that two tokens. So I've tried that, but often my opponent either has justice, so I can't lose a single round, or else I'm going to have a hard time winning, or my opponent has Abu Nakashi and I'm giving him tokens and I'm activating his Byunja, and that can be pretty deadly. Or my opponent has Goansul, and if I'm too late on the board compared to my opponent, like using crazy Glork, for example, then he might win with the 10-point difference, which can be a bit scary. I've seen Rook plus Galmi plus Phoenix as well. Not completely convinced on this one, but the idea is to kind of win in terms of tempo. Galmi giving tempo, Phoenix giving in tempo, and with Rook, you're not going to be sacrificing too much, maybe a little with this to kind of get the cards you need to move forward. But the idea is once this passive is in play, you're aiming for 15 cards. Because first of all, you won't have 6 level 3s like usual, but you'll have 8. Riyadh can be a level 3. This Phoenix can be a level 3, so that means that you have 8 level 3, so it's easier to fill up that third row. And if your opponent tries to block you with captures, that's when the Rook passive comes into play, and you'll easily be able to go around that. If there's destruction, sacrifices, or Kwai, that can still be a problem. But at least that this combination can try to run for that 15 card victory. And I would say that's about it. I've seen also people try to play Rook to make their Goan Sul or their Abilasha stronger, because if they take Rook and the opponent did not take any release cards, that can be a surprise. Typically, you're the second player. Your opponent chooses a clan, you choose 2, your opponent chooses 2 clans, and you see that in his combination, he has no release. I don't know, like Justice, Phoenix doesn't have any release, and a Goan Sul. So maybe a Justice, Phoenix, Goan Sul, for example. Well, then maybe taking Rook and if you have something like an Abilasha or a Xian or even a bit of a Bunakashi or Nahashima to capture things, in that case you'll be able to lock him for good, because he won't have any way of releasing his cards. And a lot of people in the current meta are forgetting about release, because Rook is often passive, so release is not as valuable and often is not needed. But people start to forget how to play when release becomes needed, and sometimes maybe taking Rook to punish your opponent for not having taken any release in his clan selection might be a valuable strategy. And that's about it on Rook. Another, I would say, long video, but I think there was a lot of things to say on Rook. The cards I kind of see who deserve a buff would be Necrogob, would be Kaez, and would be Rook. Probably not all 3, but those are the cards that I kind of would be looking at to give a little boost to help Rook become not just a fun clan, but also an efficient one, if possible. Next video, I'll probably try to do a video on drafting, and we'll see how that goes. Anyways, thanks a lot for listening, and see you soon.